Welcome to Change Lab, where leaders talk openly about the realities of transformation, the trials, trade-offs, and transitions that separate intention from results. So today I'm really excited to have Julianne Sobral here. She is a seasoned executive who is a certified leadership coach and a trusted advisor with over 20 years experience leading people strategy, organizational transformation, and executive development across sectors. She currently serves as Chief People Officer at InQtel, a strategic investor that identifies and accelerates cutting edge technologies for national security. So, welcome, Julianne. So glad to have you.
So excited to be here, Sondra. Big day.
Big day. So tell me a little bit, or tell our listeners a little bit about IQT. It's a really interesting organization, and let's kind of ground them in the organization before we jump into our topic today.
Yeah. So at QT, we consider ourselves really a trusted bridge between government, venture capital, and commercial startups. So, what that really means in terms of being a bridge is we're making strategic investments to leverage global startup innovation for the national security mission. We empower our partners to advance their capabilities, safeguard our missions, and stay ahead of emerging threats. Obviously, all very important right now.
Absolutely. And because you're in the technology business, essentially, I think our topic today is going to be really relevant. And our topic is all about kind of the mismatch between organizational AI ambition and workforce readiness. And so I'd love to start by talking a little bit about IQT's strategic intent with AI. And, I wonder if you've actually have explicitly stated what your strategic AI intent is.
Yeah. So, first, let's to your exact point about being a technology based company and actually looking out for the best technologies in the startup community. We have some of the best and brightest who actually are masters in, artificial intelligence and identifying those technologies. So we start from a place of abundance
Hmm.
versus other organizations, but that doesn't mean that we don't struggle along the way either and are also thrown into the waters of uncertainty like every other organization. So what we're trying to do here in terms of strategy is to obviously be a leader in the field, a leader in adoption and a leader in AI fluency, and then also a leader in training and ready and getting our workforce ready. And what I've learned along the way, I think we're going to talk about, which is there's a little bit of mismatch and not enough attention going on of how do we get our workforce ready, even when we're starting with amazing, in a very deep technologists at the beginning.
Well, I think it raises expectations, right? And
Yes.
it makes it, 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 it makes the organization probably put special pressure on the organization that, well, of course we have to be AI fluent and AI ready.
Yes,
And yet it's really new to everyone. So
it is.
easier said than done. Uh, so we just touched on something that you and I have talked a little bit about, which is AI fluency, and that's a word I've heard you, or a term I've heard you use a number of times. And there are other terms that are being thrown around, like AI literacy. So let's talk a little bit about AI fluency. When you talk about AI fluency, what do you mean by that? And what does workforce readiness mean to you?
Yeah, no, great question. So first, let's AI fluency. So I have this acronym. What would Julianne understand? As being surrounded by brilliant people every day, where I am sure enough, I'm not the smartest person in any room. And so I always like to break down things because I think we get into a world where we throw out a lot of buzzwords, especially with AI. So where AI fluency really is, it's just the effective ability to use AI effectively. And that means effectively, responsibly, and confidently. So that
Mm,
it's that simple. That's what we mean by AI fluency, which is using it effectively, responsibly, and confidently. And that's then doing it in real workflows. that means you're AI fluent. If you're able to do those three, that in real workflows. So it really includes kind of a foundational understanding of AI concepts and understanding its limitations as a part of it. And you have to have an ethical awareness as part of that to understand biases, private privacy, and also transparency. So that is what we're talking about. So
Uh,
again, in the what would Julianne understand language is just how do you use AI responsibly and confidently in your work. Period.
yeah, and I love those three pieces, and I think confidently is certainly one that a lot of people struggle with, right? It's
Yeah.
when you talk about what would Julianne do, I think about, what would Sondra do, or, what would she think?
Right.
Because I'm the perfect guinea pig, and, AI has taught many of us who don't feel like we're as technically adept as some of the people around us, that you just jump in,
Yeah.
but you have to have the confidence to jump in, and that's tough. It can be tough. So, I think it's great that you've defined what it is that you want people to do and how that translates to AI fluency. Let's talk a little bit about AI fluency in the workplace. Who's responsible for making that happen, and how does that happen, or how are you doing it at IQT?
Yeah. So, two things I want to first set kind of the stage. So, I think the answer is that leadership and the whole organization is responsible if you're doing this right. This is not it can't be just top down. It has to be top down, bottom up, and peer to peer. That is the standard that needs to be set, I think, for making your organization AI fluent, right? But you just pulled on something about re-emphasizing the word confidently. And what I want to start by really it's like to give leaders a real tangible thing to walk away with is we have to start by resetting the fear narrative because one of the
Mm,
things is I spent the last year and a half trying to up my AI fluency so that I can bring kind of what as I learn right to the organization. And to do that is first is that we're starting this conversation from a place of fear and not facts. And fear does not instill confidence. So just to start with there, right? Right.
definitely not.
And then media. And look, my early career was in media. I love journalists. Please hear that for all journalists leading. I love journalists. But right now, media narratives are controlling this and they're amplifying two things job loss and then a dystopian scenario. Most recent, obviously, thing that sent Wall Street bananas to like a few days ago, right? So if we just want to take a minute, just think about the psychology of fear, if I put on my executive coach hat, right? Is that it's something that when we feel fear, when we're threatened, and for fear to be threatened is often out of a place of either security, approval, or control. And AI has an amazing trifecta on us for our fear and the fact that it's threatening all three at the same time, right? So, what we as an organization and what leaders need to do is reset the conversation so it's not starting from a place of fear and it's also not starting from top down, but that it's that we're all coming to this and that we're not doing it so that we're explaining it that there is opportunity in this, right? When I had to give up my BlackBerry, I loved it. I did my thumb so fast and everything. I was so resistant to the iPhone, right? And my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, was like, "You gotta go Apple," right? And I didn't wanna go Apple. But we're at another moment, and I know I'm simplifying it, but I feel like that's what we have to realize is change is hard. And so we
Yes.
have to address the fear that's in the system about this. And too often we're starting the conversation with a fear base and we have to fix that. So AI isn't just like this shift we have to make, it's an identity shift for professionals. And so we have to move from a place of fear to trust. And so, in moving from panic to capabilities, how is this going to accentuate you and augment you, not from a place of, oh my gosh, it's all falling down. And so, to your question of like, how do you start AI fluency in an organization? Where to start? It starts from leadership, but all around, we have to make sure the foundation isn't coming from this fearful place.
So, I think that's like really insightful, Julianne, and it has been missed by a lot of people. I mean, we all know that it's creating fear, but in terms of adoption and how leadership can address that fear, it really, being very deliberate about it is important because the psychology is real. Uh,
Totally real.
so, with that said, how do you create a feeling of safety and and a sense of confidence that helps with that identity, that fear of identity loss and all of that? What can leaders do to culturally help people feel good about this?
Right. So I think one thing is to first is be vulnerable and actually an experiment and show failure, bring excitement. That's where leaders are doing. A lot of leaders are doing well, right? I think there is like the percentages in terms of executive confidence is like, I think over the 80% mark, whereas employees are feeling like are at the 28% mark. And so as
Little
leaders,
gap there.
little gap. And so we got to bring it. But it's really around training, right? I mean, you think about something, learning how to ride a bike. Most people have learned how to ride a bike. And so when you first got out there, and even if you've been an adult learner riding bike or learning how to swim, you are ridden with fear, right? And so you have to get out there and do it. And so by experimenting and trying and knowing that it's okay to mess up and fail, that's one of the things is giving them permission to experiment and to also fail at it. And so that's simply one. Two is communicate. We have to communicate what are we doing? Why are we doing it? How are we doing it? Often, and you can't, it's wash, rinse, repeat. You got to do it over and over again
Yep.
so that everyone keeps
Can't
hearing
over
you,
communicate on this.
right? And your actions have to match what your words are saying. I mean, it's all basic stuff. Like, right? I always say most of the things that we needed to learn, we learned in kindergarten. And it's true, right? And so that's I think the piece that leadership really needs to do is set that expectation. And one thing that we have been talking about is that we went in. Read a great post by the people over at Canva, and they had closed their organization for a week to do a all AI training. And I was like, that's brilliant. Because one thing we read about often is that people are trying to do this plus their day jobs.
Right.
And so what we have done here is to do the experimenting side and to create an opportunity to start building trust is we've done launched these AI learning days, and we just had our first one 2 weeks ago. And then we're planning on having another one over the summer where we're basically standing down all meetings. We're all coming together into several rooms and we're actually doing just that, which is getting to make sure that we have the fundamentals straight about what is our strategy around AI and then what is it for some, and make sure that we're all increasing our fluency from wherever we are and we're not leaving anyone behind.
So you're actually taking basically shutting down for a day and you're giving everybody the opportunity to focus, to really dig in, understand what this is about. Uh, and and then you bring them back. You're bringing them back, the same set of people back a second time?
Yeah, we're taking our entire population, staff, and our whole global population and doing this with all of them. Now, again, in light of experimenting, I want to be clear. We are our survey is currently open and we're getting lots of feedback on what we could be doing better, but that's it. We jumped in with both of our feet and we're actually trying to figure out how do we do this well in terms of learning and development for our staff and also meeting each individual where they are because we have 185 people here at this organization. And so everyone's fluency, we have 185 different fluencies. And so
Right.
do you meet each person where they are? And we're trying to figure that out right now. We have people who are super power users in their personal life. And then we have people and then power users in their work life. And then we have people who have literally, we had one person who said they've never touched anything with AI. Now they probably have and they don't know it,
Wow.
but that is our job as leaders right now is to bring everyone along on this journey. And instead of saying, we're going to cut all of your jobs and this is what the, next future looks like in 5 years and stuff, is saying, no, we're in this together. How are we going to bring you along? It is our job and responsibility to bring you along and train you, which may be a polarizing thought, but that's what we do. That is the care and feeding you give for your staff to help them because they in turn care about your business. And that's what we're trying to build here at InQtel.
Yeah, I can imagine that level of commitment where you say, okay, this is what we're doing today. It's what everybody's doing. No meetings, no phones, no
Yeah,
emails. We're getting together and we're focusing on this is what that says to the attendees is that we're really serious about this and
right.
about you, right? We're
Right.
investing in you, which I think is really a tremendous way to demonstrate your commitment. Uh, so I'd like to go back to it, you've got people in all of these all these different places, all these different levels of maturity. How do you, when you bring them together for a day, how do you upskill everyone? Do you segment them? Do you, bring them all to a certain baseline? How do you make that day productive for everyone?
Yeah. Well, and I this will hopefully be useful to those who are listening. So I'll tell you what we did, and then what we've already learned. So what we did was we sent out over the summer an AI fluency survey. It was pretty extensive and asked people a lot of questions. And from that result of the survey, we split them into three tracks. We called them AI novice, AI curious, and then AI practitioners. The names kind of speak for themselves. And then what we did was we built a learning day around each one of those with very specific objectives, right? So, by way of example, like a novice objective was to make sure that everyone understood the vocabulary that was around AI. Again, what is AI fluency, right? How do we define it? And also just the evolution of AI. Where did it start from? How did it come? Who are the major players? You hear all of the times the different LLMs, but really grounding everybody in just a basic foundational knowledge. So that's by way of example. And then we had outside speakers, but we are very lucky again that we had a lot of inside teachers. So our AI practitioner group was a lot of the teachers for the day. So they were deployed in different ways, like small talks, like, lightning talks, and then also longer sessions about how to use certain different, AI tools and also demonstrations of workflow. We also had some just longer speakers, even a few outside speakers. What we have now learned, and one of our biggest takeaways from AI Learning Day is the fact is that people want hands-on learning. And so where we fell short is we didn't do enough hands-on learning, smaller talks, more opportunities. So the next one will be more of like an AI fair is already where we're going, where we're going to have tons of stations set up where people do self tours. We give them all of the places in advance and they actually go hands-on keyboard and actually do some of the tools because that's what they want. They want the teacher behind them to say, and it also makes a lot of sense because we have a lot of different and unique roles here at InQtel and at IQT, and we obviously need what I need as an HR practitioner is very different than what a technical architect needs in terms of their daily workflow. So basically, we learned two things I would just say is one is you cannot do enough hands-on learning. And then two is that you need to individualize even more, right? Like you can't just roll out one big learning tech, like going to a conference, right? Some of the content will hit, you kind of know that, but people want tailored individual opportunities to practice and use AI and ask their questions. So we will be turning up the dial on this in our next iteration.
Yeah, I think it often feels conceptual until you can apply it to your work issues. Yeah. And so having it be role specific, and certainly having people get to play with things, that certainly builds confidence and it gives you sort of that practical, oh, so this is how it's going to change what I do and how I do it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I love the ads that you're making. Or what? what were there any big surprises that came out of your first AI learning day? You came up with a few lessons. Were there any surprises?
Well, maybe to others, maybe not to chief people officers. So one is that you, as any HR person knows, you're really only ever shooting for 85% satisfaction because you will always have a 15% margin who will have thought of how to do it better. And so we got a lot of feedback on how to do it better. I think the biggest thing is that I would say I take away, and I don't, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this as an HR person, but my shocking discovery is adults really prefer learning by doing. And I know that's
Mhm.
not, I should have had that as a default setting at the beginning, but that really is exactly what my biggest surprise was. Because I think about that from a kid's standpoint, right? You learn by doing. Why would that
Absolutely.
change as an adult? Yeah, but that is it. It's that revelation for me is like, you should have seen this coming. This is what they need. And it's a, so I say that to everyone else so that hopefully my mistake can be helpful to you.
Well, and I think it's a progression. I think that it is very useful to get people up to speed on what this is about, and to have some people talking, some talks and such, because then you feel informed, and then you're
Yeah.
ready to jump in, right?
Yes.
So,
One, it goes to exactly what you said at the very beginning, which is hands-on workshops really increase confidence
yes,
and super key, it increases adoption because you have done it. So then you can go replicate it. So again, especially with role relevant cases, it's the way to go.
yeah, no, that's good stuff. So let's talk a little bit about adoption, because we've talked about fluency, and as a CHRO, I'm curious as to, first of all, what is your role in AI adoption in the organization? Well, I'll stop there. I'll just ask one question at a time.
Yeah. So I take this pretty seriously, which is why I went on a year and a half journey myself to kind of get ready, which is I think that anyone who heads up the HR function and any member of a leadership team right now, their job is to make sure that their organization is adopting AI. And that doesn't come from a place of fear. That just comes from a place of a business disruptor reality that we have to face. And so we do need to embrace it, but embrace it with optimism and a place of trust, right? And so when you think about, workforces and changing workforces, HR is should be right smack set in the center of those conversations. There are I have, like, this new bestie group, right? And this is things that, probably wasn't on my HR bingo card, 20 years ago. But one is my chief data officer, my chief information officer, and I are now BFFs because we are talking on a weekly, if not daily basis. And that is your new secret sauce. All three of us are equally on the hot seat for AI adoption as an organization. And I'm sure that is true for many other organizations, but that is a new trifecta that really needs to be honored and you've got to start there.
So, if we can, I'd love to dig into that, because I think there are probably many people listening who are struggling with this. This is a cross functional, as you said at the beginning. Everybody's responsible for this, right? Uh, but at the C level, it's very cross functional.
It
So
is.
can you talk a little bit about? Is it just that you spend more time together and share things, or is there any formal governance to how you're doing this together?
This is building the plane while I mean, right? This is while flying it, right? We're all there, we're all doing it. So, yes, there is governance, but we're also building the governance while we're making discoveries, right? And so I love a good RACI model, as many people who love frameworks do. And so when I think about it is ultimately accountable is the CEO and president, whoever is the head of your organization. When you think about AI adoption, they're on the hook, right, for it because it has to do with organizational business change and relevancy, right? So they're the A, they own it. But when you go to the responsible side of who has to be in it, you have the people readiness side, which is your head of HR. You have the data readiness side, which is your chief data officer or whatever role you may have. And then you have your infrastructure and your security side of it, both equally as important. And that is going to be your chief information officer or again, whatever akin role you have. That's how we are set up. And so there's heavy responsibility, and each one of those has to have 100% responsibility, but doing it in a cross collaborative way. And as I said,
Mhm.
talking almost daily.
Yeah, yeah. As far as modeling, which is something you talked about earlier, from a leadership perspective, sort of this idea of modeling how we're fearless or, we're jumping in, we're doing these things. And, when I think about your trifecta of leaders, how do you model to the rest of the organization that this is where we're headed and I'm vulnerable too?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, one is, it's being honest and setting the tone. So we have pretty, sending out the AI fluency survey, we had a pretty good, clear communication. Why are we doing this? How does this help you? Right. People want to know, how does this help me? It's the
The
tale as
old,
old as
yep,
time. Tale as old
yep.
as time, right? What have you done for me lately? That's what I always say to people. What have you done for me lately? And that's right. Like you should be asking that question. And so it's clear communications. Like your communications, we have working lockstep with internal communications. If we're making any changes, tell them. And then also this idea of innovation speaking. So we have something called the AI Hub, right, on our SharePoint site. And so this is a place where we have blog posts going up regularly. So if people who really want to engage on what's going on, we give out things. We bought everyone an AI Explorer card by way of another example. So we gave everybody in the company $40 to do whatever they want with AI personally in their life, right? So I have a ChatGPT subscription and also Perplexity. That's how I use my money, right? Because I like to do deep research on certain things. And then I also like to, my kids throw questions at me all the time. And I'm like, ChatGPT, answer that for me. And but let me verify it to make sure it's right. 92% of people don't verify the results. Make sure you verify. But that is like, right. So we've encouraged this thing of like, you can plug in any way you want. We're doing this together. And then we're communicating often about it.
Yeah, that love that explorer card idea. That's a winner.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
a
and even the
big,
name explorer card, it just
yes.
yes, it sounds fun and adventurous, right?
Yes, and people then talk about what they've used it on, and people give each other ideas, and I mean, it's awesome, and then people will choose to write a blog post so they can share with the rest of the staff what they've used it on. It was a brilliant idea, and it's been a real game changer for us.
I can imagine. I could talk to you all day,
Yes.
but I wanna make sure we cover, a couple more things, and that is, I'd love your perspective, Julianne, on what's not getting enough attention as we look at AI adoption.
Yeah, so this is something that I did a lot of learning on my own. So the first thing that I already hit on, I have probably th- four things that I can touch on. There's probably five, but I'll stick with four. First is that time. I've already kind of mentioned this. Employees a lot of times are already overloaded. So AI just becomes one more thing that you're adding to their plate. And they're saying, from leadership, you're saying, hey, well, it's going to create capacity for you. Yes, yes, it could, and yes, it
At some
may
point,
at some
maybe not
point,
right away.
but there is a huge initial investment. So you have to realize you have already taken a crowded plate. And so creating time, that's why we did the AI Learning Day by way of example. Again, that is not just that means one and done, and that's how we've done it, but really strategically ensuring that we're carving this out. If you do KPIs, creating KPIs so that if you're incentivize people against it so that you're really actually making sure that you're creating time in their day because it requires if there's one thing I underestimated, the upfront investment in time is huge to get your workflows built and processed and to incorporate it. So that's number 1 is time. 2, middle management. Not getting enough conversation. There's like maybe 4 or 5 articles about there. Absolutely such a misstep that this isn't getting more conversation. Your middle management is your key to unlocking your AI adoption. If they don't have the time to do it, if they don't have the attention to do it, if they don't have the mandate to do it, and it has to be collaborative. You have to be bringing their voices in. They have an entire wealth of knowledge in terms of their point of view. I spent my entire summer interviewing we have 40 middle managers in our organization, and I spent my whole summer interviewing them and had the most important insights and takeaways because they know what's going on in the ground. They have to translate up and down. And so if they don't model it, adoption stalls, period. Um, the third thing is getting enough talk, but it bears repeating, which is data, data, data. I have not gone to a single AI, seminar, conference, or anything about and not heard about golden data sets. It is built on data. So if your data isn't good and you don't have good data standards, it is not going to be effective for you. I had no idea how important our CDO was. I tell him every single day how I believe, and this is coming from the head of HR, that he has the hardest job out there. It is unbelievable how important this is. And again, it can seem very like, I don't know if this is the right word, but unsexy to spend time cleaning your data sets. Like, who wants to do that? Everybody wants to do strategy. Nobody wants to clean data sets, but you actually can't do it if you don't have a clean data set. So we have to make sure that organizations are spending time there. And then the one other thing is, and it's actually a great place to end, which is where we started, which is just the fear factor. Again, we're not naming it, and that we're starting the conversation from the wrong place. So we're starting it from this workforce that feels anxious. And
Hmm.
again, that's not ubiquitous. I know that's not everywhere, but when you start from a place where employees are fearing around their job security and or skill erosion or their identity, this is not a great place to start a fundamental conversation to get you to adoption. So you have to do where we started the conversation. Leaders have to start from a place of trust and also emotional validation, right? Like they want to actually hear us, I understand where you're at, and that's okay, right? But we're obsessing about the tools and we're underinvesting in kind of the trust, time, and the translation that we need to be doing as leaders right now.
You've raised so many important issues, and the translation layer, the middle management is starting to get more attention, but
Starting.
it's huge
It's huge.
because they're getting the squeeze. They are experiencing the change like everybody else, right? So they have to adopt, and then they have to translate to their people, and so they are this layer that is critical to success. Without them, you just can't get there.
Yeah.
But I like the 3 T's. Well said.
Thanks. Trust, time, and translation. Here we go. Yes.
Julianne, if people wanna find you, learn more about you, what's the best way for them to do so?
I am on LinkedIn, and it's very easy because it's just my first and last name. So I think I'm one of one. So you can find me found out on
Excellent.
LinkedIn. Yeah. Yes.
Excellent. The one and only,
The one and only. The one and only.
a singular sensation you
Yes.
are.
Thank
Julianne, thank you. This has been so much fun, and I've learned a ton, and I know our listeners will too.
Thanks so much, Sandra. This was awesome. Thanks for inviting me.
You bet.